4 o'clock. If everyone would stand, we will call this City Council work session to order. At this time, we have a word of silence. Thank you. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and good evening. Council, make sure if you got to ask questions or so on, please sure to make sure that your microphone is turned on so we can hear it for the record. Good evening and welcome to the for the April 14th, 2026. This is the City Council work session and call the order was made. And at this time, if you would do the roll call, please.
Ms. Wilkins-Brent?
Here.
Mr. Crisp?
Here.
Ms. Hambrick?
Present.
Mr. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Menke?
Present.
Ms. Lesby Mitchell?
Here.
Ms. Tingle-Sames?
Here.
Mr. Stone?
He's not here, but he's coming. Okay. Item number 3, if you would look on your, is the approval of minutes from April 13, 2026 City Council meeting. At this time, I will entertain a motion. Motion made by Ms. Mitchell. Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second made by Mr. Chris. Do I have any further discussion or questions?
Mayor?
Yep.
Yeah, so correction that perhaps we can incorporate into the motion. Under Mayor's comments, number 3, 3D, historical marker application, says recognizing Alexander King Richards instead of Keene.
Okay.
And then the second question I have is, given the item number 5, the GMWSS customer usage update, basically it talks about the information provided, but that was not included in our packet, and it's not incorporated into this document. Can that be either amended to incorporate the slides and distribute the slides to all of us, or the information that was in the slides be incorporated into the
Are you making a motion to, what you want to do is make an amendment to that to add
Well,
those?
you have a motion and a second, so I'm requesting that, if that could be a friendly amendment.
Okay. You all have heard that. Are there any questions to that?
I would like to have that as well. I think that's good. That's excellent information.
Okay, so you all have heard, do I need to take off the motion that was here? We'll just,
No,
you'll
just-
go with that, we'll
just
go with
that
that motion?
If the-
motion
Okay.
should include the correction of the name as well as, I don't know if this goes in, council could tell us if we need to put, this dissemination of the information that the water company reported. Does that need to be in the approval of the minutes or something separate?
Are you all asking for a copy of what was presented on the screen
Yes.
as opposed to an amendment, the language in the minutes?
Well, it needs to be included in the information, because it's not that it's not, it just says it was given. And then the second component of that was that we never saw that ahead of time, and it was not included in the packet, so we don't have that information. It was just shown on the screen. So I would like a copy of that.
So I don't know, do we need to have to change that there, or do we just simply just add to that to make sure they get the copy of those?
Would council be able to answer that? Whatever you want to do.
So we can just simply amend the motion, amend the minutes to include that a report to be sent to this council on what was left out,
And included in the minutes,
included in the minutes,
attached to the minutes.
all right?
Correct.
Okay, so
Devin, is that?
you got that, Devin, now?
Sharing a copy of the report and incorporating it into the minutes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, all right, now,
What's that? The, and then the King versus Keen in item 3D.
okay. So, all right, so you have heard the motion, the amended motion, so it has been properly made and second. All the
Is it second? Whoever seconded needs to second it.
I thought,
I made the motion, and Sanjay, did you make the second?
let's go back. So, motion was made by you. Now, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, so are there further questions and or comments to this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. All righty. Again, this evening, we're going to look at the following. Again, welcome you here. What you see before you, or what the task of this work session is a preliminary, complete request of information. Again, let me tell you from the outset, this is not the final budget or anything like that. These are simply information that I'm sharing with you, this council, so you will have this information, and that, you know, the reason why we have these work sessions and the reason why we're being very, very vigilant and very, very slow in adding these to the process, because I want to make sure that everybody sees what is being presented to me for consideration for the budget. And that, again, want to remind you, this is not the end, because there's still some more, things we're going to have to do with this. There's some more information we're going to have to look through, so looking at marketing data, revenue, and other factors that we're going to have to consider before this becomes, where we're going to present this to you all on May, give me the date again, 14th?
11th.
What?
11th.
May 11th, thank you. So that's what you're going to get here. And like I said, if you want to ask questions, be sure to do that as we go along. But at the end, when this is completed, you will have some time to digest this, to look at this. And any questions or information that you might need further, feel free to contact me and let me know, or Stacy, and then we will get that information to you in a timely fashion. Are there any questions and so on? We have here with us, okay, so Stacy, I'm going to turn it over to you, let you start with this.
Good evening. So we'll take a brief look at our agenda on the next slide. We will talk about, this is the same format we went through last year at our work session. So we'll talk about a few budget assumptions that are incorporated throughout all funds. We'll look at the departmental general fund budget request, the capital projects that have been requested by departments or discussed among with council at previous work sessions or meetings, preliminary revenue projections. We'll look at how all the budget requests impact fund balance. As the mayor mentioned, this is not his final recommendation, but just so you can see kind of the starting point that the mayor will then work towards as he presents his proposed budget in May. We will look at a couple of our larger funds, 911 dispatch, cemetery budget request, and then a couple of the other special revenue funds that have recurring revenue. So the next slide, as the mayor said, this is information only. The first thing, right now, this budget includes a recommended 3.7% COLA, and I'll tell you how the mayor arrived at that. The Department of Local Government issued, as it always does, the COLA for elected officials back in January or February, and that was 2.7%. So that was our starting point. However, the Kentucky Public Pension Authority, CERS as you all may know it, is increasing the employee contribution for over half of our employees by 1%. The ultimate goal is that all hazardous employees will contribute 2% of their paycheck to the health insurance fund. and all non-hazardous employees will contribute 1% of their paycheck to the health insurance fund for the retirement system. Currently, Tier 1 employees don't contribute anything at all, so they're going from 0 to 1 or 0 to 2. And then the Tier 2 and 3 hazardous currently contribute 1%, and they're going from 1% to 2%. So the vast majority of our employees are going to increase their contribution by 1%. That's not something we have a say over, and the reason we did not break it down 0, 1, and 2 is we've done a lot of work, especially in our public safety departments, to try to work on salaries and where they're at, and if you start changing the COLA for those departments, it starts to mess with compression between ranks, or someone who's been here longer potentially making a little less than someone, so it's easier to do the 1%, so that affects over half of our employees. So, any questions? Didn't know. And then, Mayor, I think you were going to mention some additional salary and compensation things we're considering, if you wanted to mention that with the public safety.
Well, on the public safety side, there are going to be some positions that we're looking at and so on. But there was also brought to a possibility of a larger structural compensation, which at this time I'm going to look at the market and also look at some revenue and other factors, and then probably look at that at a later time.
So we're still considering that, but it's not in the numbers presented at the moment. So just so you're aware of that. We've had meetings with executive staff and then continuing to have meetings, I know, scheduled with our public safety departments to keep discussing that. So the CERS rate is actually decreasing again by a small percentage. So for hazardous, it's going from 35.73 to 34.72, and non-hazardous from 18.62 to 17.43. Again, they do their actuarial analysis on the balance, what's being paid out, what's in the fund. Investment streams have been a little higher in recent years, so we're getting another small decrease on that. That saves approximately $145,000. Obviously, there's other expenses taking up that savings, but did want to let you know those rates are going down. Property and liability insurance, same as last year, estimated at 10% higher, mainly due to property values. The city itself is also not immune to property values increasing, which also increases our insurance rates. The next item is one that we were very conservative on. We had our third-party administrator of our medical plan. They provide us a fully insured equivalent. We're a self-insured, partially self-insured entity, meaning we put money aside and we pay our claims directly. We don't pay the insurance company. We do that, pay the medical bills directly, but they gave me a new fully insured equivalent based on expected claims. It was very conservative. It was a 12% increase, but I do think we'll continue to dive into that. I think that can possibly come down some. We'll see where our reserve is at. We like to keep about a $500,000 reserve in the medical fund for the years when we have bad claims years. But the Sharks program and some other things that we've done with our pharmacy benefits has helped over the last year or two, year and a half. I think we've had that now. So this was very conservative on the high side that's incorporated into this budget. So if we can see some additional savings, we'll continue to work on that number.
Stacy,
Yes.
does that 12%, that's medical premiums, or does that include stop loss and all the other?
That includes everything. So I think our stop loss was going up about 15%. I can't remember the exact number. They gave me a percentage on the administrative cost as well, because we do pay for third-party administration.
Right.
But this was based on the claims data, and so it was high. We also budget, the other thing too, we budget high for, so this 12%, this is a 12% increase in the medical cost for the budget total. So the other thing is any vacant positions, we always budget for full family benefits, our most expensive plan. So sometimes we do see some savings when people take those positions that have single insurance or other. So any vacant positions are always budgeted fully. So And just as a reminder, we have the fund balance policy that council has adopted, and we'll talk about this more later in the presentation, but based on the operating expenditures that are presented as request, that would be 14.7 million that we would be required to keep as our minimum fund balance if everything was funded that was requested. Next slide, please. City Hall staffing. One of the things the mayor has been talking about a lot in the finance committee and is in here is an assistant finance director. There's a lot of operational efficiencies that could be gained from that position. Some additional oversight at a higher level of the budget and policies and procedures, allowing to focus on some of those big picture projects as well as succession planning and et cetera. So that is in there at a request as the only new position requested at City Hall level. And if you'll go to the next slide, again, I've got to fine tune that salary with Megan. This is an estimate for salaries and benefits total. You will see the increase in salaries and benefits of general government. The majority of that is the assistant finance director. Salaries, benefits, estimated at 156. Again, I've got to talk to Megan about that's. I put a higher number in to make sure I had it covered, but it may be less. The director of housing and homelessness prevention, if you recall, the city funds this jointly with the county, and we have been using ARPA funds for the first 3 years of this program. ARPA runs out. We had budgeted for that through June 30 of this year. So that will be incorporated into the general fund, general government expenses now. But there is an offsetting revenue for half of that. So the county does fund still half of this position. And as the mayor mentioned, we always have requests for certain position adjustments, and he will consider each of those individually. There was a request for an increased salary on the HR specialist, and that's something the mayor will review the information presented and determine if that's something he wants to do. Operating expenses largely stayed the same. There is some increase for legal services because we had to amend that budget this year. Utilities, now that we'll finally be back in there together, we'll have a larger utility budget. For the last few years, we've only been paying utilities down at Water Street and a couple of the other smaller buildings, so just making sure we have enough for that. Building maintenance, we'll need that again for when little things come up. So that is the general government budget. Okay, next is information technology. This budget, the majority of the increase you'll see is in professional services. We assigned our new managed services provider contract with NetGain. That was effective April 1st. So we only had a few months cost of that contract in this year's budget. So now we have that full year contract. If you'll recall, we added about $5,000 per month, $60,000 per year for essential security services citywide. We also added $7,500 a month for the staff augmentation. So this is reflecting a full year of those increased costs for that contract. Website services, there is a new service in there, but some others have decreased, called Doc Access. You can see that in the notes. Hardware, software subscriptions, these are things like our phone system subscription with Avaya. We pay a certain amount a month for the phones themselves, and then we pay a certain amount per month for the phone service. It's voice over IP, so we pay that instead of your traditional phone line for most of that. You can also see it includes our Microsoft GCC licensing once that project's complete, and our essential, that's where the essential security services are. The next one, the computer hardware software, the biggest increase on this is we have virtual servers that require license renewals. So a lot of those are coming due in this next year, so that's an estimate for that. And capital projects include $125,000 for a cybersecurity assessment and strategy, which includes our disaster recovery and carryover of just making sure we finish up that GCC tenant construction. So that is the information technology budget. Any questions? Okay. City council and city clerk budgets. So not a lot of changes here other than salaries and benefits for the travel and training. Last year I had budgeted for the training incentives in salaries, but we're actually handling that as through accounts payable. So that's that additional $4,000 you see there. That may need to be increased if anyone is going to have 2 training credits next year. It's $500 per training credit, so right now I have $500 per council member budgeted, but if anyone is able to achieve 2 training credits over the next year, their payment would increase to $1,000. The city clerk's office, salaries and benefits is just COLA. As a reminder, 75% of the city clerk's salaries and benefits are charged to the general fund, with 25% being charged to the alcohol fund, because that office serves as our ABC administrator. So just want to make that note. And operating is increased due to additional, we're going to double check on this one. We had anticipated an increase in the PVA cost, but if we do not reach 6 billion, is that the correct number? Yes. Once we reach 6 billion in property assessments, our fee goes from 60,000 to 100,000. We don't think we're going to get there this year, but Tracy had put it in there as a just in case. This is the service. Again, we pay the PVA. When they send us our tax roll, there is a fee for that. So for the assessments they do for us for preparing the tax roll, city clerk's office takes that tax roll and it's imported into the property tax software. So we may be able to decrease that a little bit. Tracy had gone ahead and put that in, but after talking about it in Finance Committee yesterday, Devin reminded that we're probably not going to hit that this year. It may be another year or two. We are up over 5 billion now, though. So a lot of new construction going on. So obviously our property assessments continue to go up. Next, building inspection. No new requested staff there. So just we included the staff sheet for each one. Go to the next slide. And this one you see an decrease in salaries, and the reason for that, salaries itself actually went up 18,000, but unemployment went down, our unemployment contribution rate. We do not do state or federal unemployment. We contribute to a unemployment trust. And so they change your rate every year based on how much of a balance you've built up in that trust. Our rate for next year is actually 0. And this year's rate was at 2%. So the reason they decreased is there was a $9,000 reduction in unemployment. Medical actually decreased by $27,000. They had a new permit technician that was budgeted this past year. Again, we budget full family benefits, but if that person does not take that, that's a decrease. And then if anyone else changes their medical plans, that can also do that. And then CERS for this department decreased by $3,000. So just wanted to explain that little anomaly. If you're looking at it, why did their salaries and benefits go down? But that's why. Their benefit decreases outweighed the salary increases. But just some minor operating inflationary type adjustments, nothing new in building inspection. Next, police department staffing. Police department, this is one department you do have. It was emailed and given to you as hard copy memos, especially from our larger departments. So police department always does a great job of, you have your regular budget memo, their staffing memo, and then they have a memo for their new position. So encourage you to read those memos together. Some information on the why behind why they've requested these positions. Full-time police officers, they have requested 8 additional positions. As you'll see from the memo, 7 of those would be allocated to patrol and 1 to the special victims unit, if I'm saying that correctly. Okay, just making sure. And then they have requested an additional program staff, which is the crime analyst. And so this would assist the criminal investigations department or unit by doing a lot of the paperwork type investigating. There's a lot of, I know Captain Little can say it better than I am, and I'm sure he's outlined it better in his memo, but there's a lot of paperwork that can be sent out to other agencies, things requesting information. There's a lot of things that can be done. This would be a civilian position, so there's a lot of things that can be done by a non-sworn person who can assist and allow our detectives to be out doing interviews and more legwork, external work, while they handle a lot of the paperwork stuff on that end. One correction I want to make on this that I caught when the mayor and Devin and I were going over this afternoon. For the program staff, it should actually be 3.5 current, 4.5 requested, and that is because the open records clerk is split 50/50 with dispatch. So their authorized staffing would be 93.5, and the requested would be 102.5. But the open records clerk is shown under the police department in the personnel ordinance, but it is funded between both agencies. Any questions about those new positions? Okay, next slide. As you can see, I've included the cost for 8 new officers. Salaries and benefits would be $982,077. And for the crime analyst, it would be $101,186. And so the bulk of what you see in there, that $1.6 million increase, obviously close to $1.1 million of that is new positions requested. The operating, the $151,000, the majority of that is insurance, building maintenance, their equipment contracts. As they add new officers, they have to do new MDT leases, new Axon body cam leases, all the equipment that goes with that. Motor fuel, as we add additional officers, additional vehicles to the fleet, and also at the time of preparing this, gas prices are on the rise, so they've included an increase for that. New capital requests for the police department. They have a computer switch UPS project, and then they have mobile radios and portable radios for the 8 new officers. So if those positions are not fully funded, the number of radios would decrease in relation to how many of our officers are included in the mayor's proposed budget. Any questions about police? Okay. Next is fire department staffing. There is no new staff requested, and we'll talk. We've had a lot of conversations about this with the fire department, with finance committee, and I didn't put the timeline in here, but I'll let you know. The 9 new firefighters that are needed for Station 4, with the architects, with the design time, the time to bid out a construction contract, and actually start construction, anticipate completion of Fire Station 4 around summer of 2028. So almost 2 years out by the time you get through design and bidding, awarding contracts. So with the SAFER grant, if we apply for that in spring of 27, we would hear about hiring, we would hear whether we got that grant by October of 27. We have 90 days, it's 96 months, 90 days to hire those new firefighters. And based on what they've said, that would give us plenty of time. 6 months is plenty of time to get those firefighters hired and trained. So with that said, there is no portion of the 9 new firefighters included in this budget because we do not anticipate hiring them until late 2027, early 2028. Okay, the next page, start with the numbers. They did request a couple of salary changes on they want to change the battalion chief of training to a division chief of training because they serve the whole department, whereas battalion chiefs are serving a certain shift. They serve the whole department, and they're responsible for in-house and external training, making sure everything's tracked, everybody has their certifications. So they have requested a slight title change, an increase to that, and their administrative assistant. They have 1.5, they have a part-time, and then they have 1 full-time. So again, the mayor will consider those, as he said, with market data, with how that falls on our salary scales. One other increase besides COLA, we've been talking a lot about code enforcement. I know those of you who are on the interlocal committee and some others, just that structure of code enforcement being built out now that we have a senior code enforcement officer, 2 code enforcement officers under them, and the assistant chief of prevention, based on the amount of time that they spend overseeing, we had been charging 45% of the assistant chief of prevention's salary to code enforcement. Really and truly, they're mainly handling some high-level administrative tasks. They do the budget, they approve some work orders, some purchase orders, budgetary things. So in speaking with our new assistant chief of prevention, we felt like 10% was more accurate. So that increases the funding within the fire department from 55% to 90%, and then a corresponding reduction on the code enforcement side. And you can see operating, they made a very good faith effort. They know they have a lot of capital coming up, so they wanted to try to trim back. Most of the reduction in their operating is due to vehicle maintenance. That line item went from 300,000 to 150,000. So with all of the new engines coming on board, the last two should be delivered this summer, I believe. That will help offset a lot of that. A lot of our trucks will be new, under warranty, so we'll have a little bit of a reprieve from vehicle maintenance that we've had the last several years. In capital, you will see that some smaller projects in the stations. I do want to make note of the Station 3 basement. This was requested in next year's budget, but one of the things we've talked about in Finance Committee with the next budget amendment, this may get pulled into our current budget instead due to timing, because until this is completed, EMS cannot fully move into Station 3, which means we cannot fully take over Station 1. So maybe wanting to get that done a little sooner rather than later. So we may pull that into this year's budget. The same goes for the ATV. They do have some excess funds in vehicle maintenance this year. They budgeted high. Thankfully, it's not hit that, so they may be requesting as part of that budget amendment to move funds to their equipment line item and go ahead and make that purchase this year. So it would be a shift in years rather than fitness equipment. The fitness equipment at all three stations is over 20 years old, in dire need. So we want to make sure we're being safe when working out. So they've requested all of that. And then, can't remember if we talked about it at Fire Committee. I know we've talked about it at Finance Committee. With our way we're trying to make sure we budget according to statute, making sure before we approve purchases they're budgeted. There is, the custom engine order time is down. It was 4+ years, a few years ago, which is why we're still waiting on those two engines, but it's down to about 2 years right now or less. So they would like to go ahead, probably next month, and order a custom engine for Station 4. So we would incorporate that into a budget amendment. It would not be paid out this year, and then we would carry it forward in each budget just until the time it's delivered. If we're able to take advantage of any prepayment discounts, we might look at that. But we know, obviously, even if we pull that in to our budget prior to approval, it would be carried over till next year, because anticipated delivery would be spring, late spring of 28. So that is the capital. Any questions? And we'll talk about more about Fire Station 4, the actual construction, as part of the capital projects fund. Since this is just an equipment purchase, it lives in their budget. Okay, next, code enforcement. There is one request for staffing change in code enforcement. Their clerical staff has been part-time. They are requesting for a transition to full-time. And we can go ahead and go to the next slide, and you can see that approximate cost is $66,000 due to obviously twice the salary, but accounting for potential health benefits that they may take. We don't know that yet, so we always budget again for full family benefits just in case the person chooses to take those. This is something they've probably needed for a while and have mentioned for several years, so this is something they've requested again this year to convert that to a full-time position. And as mentioned, decreasing the Assistant Chief of Prevention's allocation from 45% to 10%. So other than that, there's not a lot of changes here. Again, they're doing a lot of things internally. They did request one new mobile radio. They hadn't purchased one yet for their new code enforcement officer, so I think they need to replace or add an extra mobile radio. Next would be, sorry.
So there was some conversation about separating out code enforcement from the fire department. Is that reflected here, or?
Not a
Is there
true
any
separation, no. I think we're reflecting the true nature of operations at the moment, which is fire department still has oversight, but not necessarily as hands-on day-to-day now that we have the additional code enforcement officer. So right now, it would just be kind of a high level of oversight, and then not to say that conversation may not continue in the future, but probably not in the upcoming year. So just, we've had a lot of, obviously, transition. We want to make sure everybody's good to go, and then before we've added a lot of new personnel, new roles in code enforcement. So just once everybody's on good footing, then that conversation will still. Public Works staffing. This staffing slide includes Public Works, the engineer's office, and since the engineering office also covers stormwater, you will see the request of 5 additional new staff. It is an equipment operator, a crew leader, a maintenance driver, and 2 maintenance workers to establish a stormwater crew. So this is something I know it's been talked about in council, so Robert went ahead, based on some conversations and feedback he's gotten, he went ahead and requested 5 additional Public Works employees that would be dedicated to stormwater. Obviously, if there's a natural disaster or snow removal needed, they will assist in those areas as well, but the primary function would be stormwater. If you go to the next slide, you can see that, let's see, we'll talk about Public Works first. So this is the general Public Works that falls under Bruin. The operating expense increase, the biggest line item there is road salt. We're still evaluating this one because, as you know, last night you did approve an additional order of 800 tons at the current unit price. So we will evaluate now that we hopefully were able to place that order, whether or not we still need a full 1,200 in next year's budget. So we'll double check on that. And again, we won't know that final price per ton until the reverse salt auction is finished in May. So he included a cushion in there to purchase more and also to account for an increase in the price per ton. Capital request, the dump truck, $300,000. That is a 20-plus-year-old dump truck. We did provide 1 new one in this year's budget, so he's been requesting both of these for a few years. He has pictures that I can show you, but there's a lot of rusted out parts, and definitely for the use that they get, need to be replaced. The wheel loader with mower attachment. What this is he currently has a tractor, a batwing mower that he uses for mowing a lot of right-of-ways, large areas. This could replace that piece of equipment, is also around 20 years old, and is probably used rather infrequently for that type of mowing. This wheel loader with a mower batwing attachment would take the place of that, but also has digging and scooping functions so that it could be useful in stormwater maintenance or other public works projects. So it could be a multi-function piece of equipment that could replace that tractor that he needs just to mow right-of-ways. And then just a zero-turn mower replacement. We replace those every 5 to 10 years as they age. Continuing on, the city engineer. This is the general budget for the city engineer. I have bolded everything that's kind of a one-time project cost. So operating has stayed basically the same. We do keep around, he's requested to keep around $85,000 in general engineering, and this is because throughout the year there's lots of little projects that pop up that need a little extra design work from a third-party firm. So we keep that for that, as well as maybe some additional CA services on small projects. The city, most of these are carryovers. The city entrance signs, the East Main Extended, and the Washington Street sidewalks. So we are getting started on those. I know the Washington Street sidewalks, we have formal quotes to evaluate right now to award those design services. So we'll have it started before the end of the year, but by the time we get to construction, it'll be close to the end of the year. So carrying that over. Continuing, this was something that I think the mayor had requested Eddie to put in, the street paving and traffic calming. Obviously, we get around $850,000, $860,000 of municipal road aid funds each year for our paving. As you know, the life of our streets is 20 years, and several years ago when we did the big financial presentation, we talked about needing probably an additional $500,000 at the time to keep every road paved every 20 years. So this was the mayor's effort to put an additional $250,000 towards some additional street paving on top of the MAP funds and those traffic calming devices that you all have been approving. Continuing the sidewalk cost sharing program and also doing another round of the sidewalk grinding. That was, I believe, successful the last time we did it for some sidewalks that are not in too bad a shape that can do the grinding. Next, the stormwater budget. So coming back to the 5-person stormwater crew, that is where this salary lives, as well as 50% of the engineering office salaries and benefits. So you can see 438,842 is the ask on that. And again, I have bolded kind of the one-time projects. We have our general engineering for stormwater, as well as our MS4 permit services. Together, those total 100,000. The Clayton Broadway design, this is the property at the corner of Clayton Broadway in front of Garth. This would be to design a stormwater feature there. So whether it be a retention basin, I won't speak to it wrong. Eddie's back there. So I believe it's a retention basin, stormwater type feature. So it's for the design of that. For repairs and maintenance, we have our usual CCTV, curb box, B&P repairs and maintenance. The Royal Springs dredging, again, I'm going to note, this is one that we may include in the budget amendment rather than next year's budget, trying to get that approved so that while the work is going on in Royal Springs Park, we could go ahead and potentially do this at the same time, just to kind of get that out of the way since there's equipment potentially already down there. Continuing stormwater repairs and maintenance in Indian Hills, Tiger Way. And then the capital projects, the carryover of the 503, 507 South Broadway Channel project, the Colony Swell preservation that was presented to you in the stormwater presentation last night. So this cost is from that presentation. And then if we're able to design the Clayton Broadway stormwater feature, Eddie did caution this 450,000 is a guesstimate on what the construction of that would cost, but we wanted a placeholder in the budget to have something in there. So we don't have an actual engineered estimate on that, but that was to have a budget placeholder for the stormwater feature there. Okay.
Stacy,
Yes.
going back to city engineer and also stormwater,
Yes.
the design fees for both the entrance signs and the design for Clayton Broadway
Yes.
is included in professional services. Why
Yes.
is that not included as part of the capital cost?
I probably should move it. We've always budgeted it in professional services, but it does get capitalized. That
Okay.
much I can tell you is it does get capitalized for depreciation purposes, but
Okay. All right.
I can change that. We've always budgeted for that separate, but
Okay.
that's an easy change to make.
Okay, thank you.
They are included in the capital cost when we depreciate and add those to the fixed asset system. Okay. Next is the interlocal budgets. I'll make a word of caution, any of the budgets from the county. The mayor, Devin, and I did meet with Judge Covington, I believe it was early March. So we haven't received any updated numbers, but the numbers from the county are subject to change if they send us a new draft of their budget. So just want to make that comment. As you can see, most of these are with the county. We do have Parks and Recreation. Our operating costs, our share of the operating is requested to be $1,832,005, which is an increase of $146,000 from last year. Ed Davis Center, which the city funds solely, that is requested to remain the same. And then $683,845 of capital. These are more of those smaller capital maintenance projects. You have a flyer in the packet with the departmental memos. Drew has circulated that multiple times. You have each column of planned capital projects for the next 3 years, and then those larger quality of life projects at the bottom. And we'll talk about those a little bit more as well. The Revenue Commission, this is just a estimated amount, knowing they'll probably have some increased operating cost and COLA, but their budget is not finalized yet, so I just included an additional $25,000, $28,000 to cover any additional requests that may come through. And then the revenue to the Scott County Fiscal Court, that is their half of our building inspection revenue and code enforcement. So,
Stacy?
yes.
Do you know why the animal, because actually it looks like not much has changed from last year except on two different, the animal shelter went up
Yes.
50. Did they share with you why that and the Parks and Recreation went up 146? Did they share with you why?
Yes, I I know there are some additional COLA in the Parks and Rec budget, just increased cost of motor fuel and other supplies, talking about the $146,000 for Parks and Rec. There is a letter in there from Drew talking about some of those increases. If the mayor wants Drew to come up and talk about it, he can, but he'd probably explain it better than I can. So I don't know. Do you want to?
Easiest answer is adding a position.
And I forgot that.
Yeah, as we've grown, youth sports is like its own animal now, so trying to bring in somebody to help me manage all of our youth sports as a person instead of my staff trying to,
So there's a personnel in there as well?
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
that's a whole new, another
Okay.
full-time position, so that's
Okay.
probably the biggest chunk of that.
got it.
Oh, no.
The animal shelter, I don't have that copy with me today, so I will make a note to
Okay.
give you that detail.
Okay, thanks.
Okay?
Stacy,
Yes.
just make sure, so, the request for the animal shelter, is that our half of it?
Yes, this
Okay.
is our half
Okay.
of all of the interlocal budgets. Okay, next slide, please. These are just their other miscellaneous budget items that don't quite fit into another department. The affordable housing does have its own operating budget. This year it's $52,500. That reduction is simply, during last year, we had carried over the match from the previous year's grant and then the match for the new year grant. So that's just a reduction of showing just 1 year of match on our White Flag Shelter, ESG, Emergency Services, and Rapid Rehousing grant. The county also has a match of the same amount, so this is our portion of that match in a small operating budget. Citywide utilities, I have a note that includes streetlights, signal lights, hydrants, an allowance for if we need to install streetlights on any streets that are completed, and leachate disposal for the Sims Road landfill. Community services grants, we have allocated $400,000. When either during the proposed budget or shortly thereafter, the mayor will share his list. We just received those applications. April 3rd is when they were due. So those are still under review by Karen to make sure they're complete and they've included everything that they needed to. And then the mayor will go through and determine which ones he's recommending for approval. We have talked about, obviously, the mayor's talked about with the finance committee, maybe not allocating the full 400, obviously, so that we have some left over if there are any additional requests that come up throughout the year. But a list will be provided to you all either at the proposed budget presentation or sometime in May for that. Community services other, that includes contribution to the airport, tourism, Scott County United. That also includes our voucher program with Rumpke. That runs $5,000 or $6,000 a month for that. Sister City, Super Recycling Day, just some other community services that we contribute towards. Transfers to other funds is $5.8 million. 5.5 of that we'll talk about here. I believe it's on the next slide. Don't go there yet, but it's on the next slide. We'll talk about the capital projects, the big ones that are being funded. We track those in the capital projects fund, but they're funded by transfers from the general fund. And the difference is transfer to cemetery fund to cover any difference there. Debt service is approximately $1.1 million, an increase of about $8,000. The lease for the Cephaletta Aquatic Center is officially paid off. We received our last invoice for that, I believe it was March. So that is paid off. We are left with our 2 bond issues. The police department bond has a balance of $2.3 million. The refinancing bond has a balance of $5.1 million, and we have until December of 34 before those are paid off, so about 8.5 more years. But we are past that prepayment point. Once you get past 10 years, you are allowed to pay down extra if we ever have funds available to do so. But just wanted to give you an update on that. Those are the two bonds that we're paying on right now. Okay, next slide. So these are the larger capital projects. All of the ones that say new are included as part of that transfer to the capital projects fund. I want to clarify on 4 of the items. The first 3 are related to the police department renovation and expansion, and then the new 911 facility. As you all know, you funded a facility needs assessment for the police department expansion and a new 911 facility. They are in the middle of that. We asked the architect to throw out some numbers for design fees, and this is just taken straight from that email. So keep in mind, this is not a negotiated price. We would go out, to pursue a design contract. We would negotiate fees. Obviously, we would set a budget for what we expect for those buildings to be constructed at. So this is just straight from the architect. When we said, can you send us some numbers as a guide for the budget? So we'll continue to talk about this over the next couple weeks, and before we have first reading of the budget to see if we feel how accurate these are. So as you can see, the first one is the police department renovation and expansion, a support building, and then renovation of the old 911 building, which would be then used for police department purposes. The fire department for design was included in this year's budget, but there was $56,000 of construction administration that would need to be funded in next year's budget, and $4 million for the construction contract. I will say, when Seth spoke with our design team, they would anticipate no more than 25% of the construction being completed next fiscal year. But again, in keeping in line with the statutes regarding budgets, we'll budget the whole amount up front, go ahead and fund that in our capital projects fund, and then spend it as it progresses. To be determined, because obviously we don't know the exact property yet, would potentially be 911 property purchase. That is the one that we don't have a cost on today, but we would most likely need to relocate that facility due to that tight campus. There's not anywhere to put it there in our current property that we own. And then I've noted on some of these, the 911 facility design, that would be funded with the county equally, since that is an interlocal department. So of the $5.9 million, it's a little over 5.5 that's actually transferred from the general fund to fund these projects. Additional projects that are not included in these requested budget numbers but have been topics of conversation. Bus stop shelters, we're looking into possible funding sources, whether or not our LGEA or other funds could be used for these. And we do have some quotes, we just weren't able to get them in time. We'll get those updated, but kind of picking our 3 highest traffic bluegrass rides stops and providing some type of shelter there. So that's a project we're looking into. And the next one is the Senate appropriation and revenue request for the Delaplane Anderson Industry Road improvements. Just keeping that in mind, council approval would be required before we put this into the budget. You did a resolution generally supporting that, I believe, without a dollar amount tied, but this is 10% of the project cost. So we use 10% of the project cost as our estimate, and council action would be required to approve this before moving forward. Yes.
So knowing what was approved in the budget for that project, should we not budget what we would actually potentially do?
3 million, was that what
Yeah. So it'd be $1 million versus 500.
So we just included a placeholder based on just a percentage of the project cost, also knowing that, I know the council didn't, the court did include a placeholder. They could amend it to allocate a larger amount, but that's following the session ending, I guess, tomorrow. The discussion for council at the next council meeting would be, what level of support do you all want to provide? So we included that for now. That number, like between now and May 11th, can and potentially will change, but wanted to include that for visibility, knowing that's something the council is going to be talking about.
And continuing just for visibility, as we mentioned, parks on the flyer that Drew has been circulating to the city, the county, the interlocal committee with those quality of life estimated cost on the lat pole construction. We do have a design contract out to bid for that right now. So the estimated construction cost on that were 4.5 to 5. And the Great Crossing Park, the new Cloverleaf ball fields, estimated cost was 5 to 6 million. So if the county and city choose to move forward with those projects, they would be shared 50-50. Okay. Next, preliminary general fund revenue projections. As you'll see, it is only about $566,000 more than what was budgeted this year. The main thing I want to talk about is payroll taxes. We had been trending over the last few years approximately 9% in our payroll tax increase year over year. That was what was used in this year's budget projection. Once we actually got to the end of fiscal year 25, the growth between 24 and 25 was actually more like 4%. Right now, we're trending about between 5 and 6% ahead of where we were at this time last year. So that's why I know during the Finance Committee I've said, and I know Tammy mentioned it during the minutes, or the committee mini update last night, was I will be taking all of the revenue data up to the last minute, up to the first reading, to make sure I have as accurate projections. I did contact the Revenue Commission, Scott Hall, and he had one of his staff members do some research. Obviously, it's proprietary information that I have that I can't share, but generally speaking, they looked at our top 10 to 20 employers, and it wasn't just one, but there were multiple that had decreased payroll this year compared to last year, and 25 compared to 24. So I do think that is affecting us some. So I was more conservative in my projection for payroll taxes for the upcoming fiscal year. So I did a 5% projection instead of 9. So that's why you actually see the projection for payroll taxes being less than what it was the year before. So we've had a lot of strong growth over recent years. I know we've got a lot of construction projects that are just starting to get going. So, those hopefully will continue to increase. But as one construction project comes on, another one's falling off. Scott said that's really hard for him to track exactly where those are affecting our payroll taxes. But, if we're able to increase this projection any at all, if I feel confident in increasing it before first reading, I will. But taking the conservative approach of that 5%, which is more what we've averaged the last couple of years and in long term. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this one. I'll continue to be in conversation with Scott. I haven't had a chance yet, I know, to talk to Chase as well as Jack Connor, just to see how things are moving with projects coming online with the wastewater treatment plant 1 expansion, and then talking to Jack as well, what he knows. But for the purposes of tonight, I spoke with Scott, and that was the information he gave me. So keeping it a little more conservative for next year on that. For insurance premium taxes, I'll talk about that one. That's also a large. I have 9.5. That is a 6% growth projection, but over the last probably, 10 years, it's been closer to 8 or 9. So this is conservative. I would like to see where one more quarter comes in. Right now, I'm working with half a year of data for insurance premium tax. The third quarter returns aren't due till April 30th. They can be postmarked April 30th, so sometimes it's the first week of May or 2 before we get all those returns in. So I'd really like to see one more quarter's data before strengthening that revenue projection beyond about 6% right now.
Stacy?
Yes.
Is the very first tax on that list, is that the property tax?
It is property, but it also includes motor vehicle, tangible, bank franchise tax. So taxes I did lump together. Property taxes, you'll be able to see in the line item report, I increased 4%, which, assuming if we take the 4% rate like we have, typically property taxes increases a little more, like 7 to 8, because of new property. That's the other thing. We have a 4% potential increase on revenue from existing property, but we also receive additional property tax revenue on new property as well. So I tried to be, like I said, as conservative as I could in this first go-round. If I feel comfortable going higher with anything, I will. So that's insurance premium tax. Franchise fees are staying fairly stagnant. The line item report, we can look at each one. One in particular, I do want to call out is, and if you choose to look at the line item report, this will be on the second page. It says page 1 of 46 at the bottom, is the cable. So this one continues to decrease. As you can see, we used to receive closer to 150,000 per year, and now it's gone 138 down to 135 projected for this year. So I have dropped that to 120,000, assuming about 30,000 a quarter, which is where our last quarter was. But as everyone cuts the cord, so to speak, and goes to streaming, and we don't get franchise fees on that, that one continues to decrease. So I did want to call that one out. And then you'll see the others are pretty close. Kentucky American Water, the hydrant fee, that has gone up, so we've got 175 there. KU is pretty flat. If they've had some rate increases, I haven't. Again, I've only got a couple quarters to look at there. So just trying to be conservative with everything on the franchise fees. Investment income, that's about, if we can keep 14 million invested, if we can keep that 30% fund balance invested, I put it around a 3.5% rate to be conservative. That's about 500,000. Rates have come down from where they were. So if we can keep that invested at 3.5% or higher, we did receive some proposals that Finance Committee will be looking at the April 27th meeting for some additional investments to close out that $20 million CD at Central Bank and try to reinvest in some other opportunities. So, and then intergovernmental revenue, that is just determined by typically the county's reimbursement of our interlocal departments, police incentive pay, fire incentive pay, that's reimbursed by the state. So the bulk of that is our ambulance, our half of the ambulance revenue. Any questions on revenue projections? Okay, next slide. This is the slide where I will remind you, this is not the mayor's proposed budget. This is as requested. So I wanted you to see the starting point that the mayor's working from, which is basically, if we took these revenue projections, if everything was funded, you know, I don't want to speak for the mayor. I'm pretty confident every single thing won't be funded. So our preliminary revenue projections were a little over 47.6 million. I have broken out the expenses into operating and capital. So our operating budget is 49 million of budget request, which would have us using almost 1.4 million in prior year revenues to balance the requested budget. I do want to make a note, the new positions that have been requested total 1.8 million. So that is obviously the vast majority of that. And then, of course, you've seen some of the other increases throughout each one, just inflationary costs, especially with motor fuel, building maintenance as our buildings age and things. But the majority of that increase is COLA and new positions. So that's the left-hand side, is the breakdown of recurring revenues compared to operating expense request. On the right-hand side, I started with the anticipated beginning fund balance, July 1, 26, which is the start of fiscal year 27. This number was taken from the quarter 2 financial report that you all were provided. I do want to make the caveat that if payroll taxes don't come in where budgeted, this could decrease. So our operating, and then the next thing I did was calculate what would our minimum fund balance be based on the budget request. So if we have 49 million a budget request, our minimum fund balance would be that 14.7 that I mentioned on the first slide. So that gives you our projected excess fund balance for fiscal year 27, which is about 12.7 million. And then you can see all of the capital requests in the requested budget. So this is that $5.5 million of large capital items that would be in the capital projects fund, as well as all of the equipment and smaller capital projects that are in there, total 10.5 million. And then carrying over the almost 1.4 from the other side. So again, if everything that was requested was funded, it would spend all but $827,000 of our excess fund balance. So Keep in mind, that is a council policy that set the 30% minimum. The mayor's goal is to work within that policy to keep that minimum. Only council can approve dipping into that 30% or changing that 30%. So, again, just reiteration, this is not the final proposed budget. This is not the mayor's final recommendation. This is just the starting point, and we will work from there. So all of this slide, or something very similar to it, I'll probably just use the same slide, will be in your proposed budget presentation on May 11th so that you can see where the mayor's final proposed budget ends up. Next slide. Just to give a little bit of attention to our other funds, the dispatch center, I'll make the same note that I did on the police department. The open records clerk, the authorized staffing should be 0.5, and they are requesting a second open records clerk. So their requested staffing on that would go to 1.5 for a total of 30 and 31. So they have requested, we just filled that position not that long ago for the open records clerk to be shared between PD and dispatch. Due to the volume, they went ahead and asked for a second one. So that request is in here. The other one, I have an asterisk by the shift supervisor. When I looked at the personnel ordinance, it still says 4 shift supervisors, but only 3 have been funded. So per the personnel ordinance, we wouldn't need a change, but it would be an additional budget cost. So on the next slide, you will see to reinstate the 4th shift supervisor, salary and benefits would cost just under $126,000. That second open records clerk that would be housed solely in dispatch would be $97,000. And there is a memo there's 2 memos from dispatch in your packet, one with their budget information, one talking about salary. We know they're probably one of the departments that has the hardest time filling and retaining positions. It is a hard line of work. And so they've done their research. We're continuing to analyze what they've given us. They've requested an increase to starting pay to $26 per hour, which is an additional $3.89 per hour to the starting pay. So that trickles up. If you increase the starting pay, it trickles up. Again, this wasn't a change in structure. It was just an increase to the starting pay, which then affects everyone above. Again, this is requested. The new capital request, they're trying to upgrade the tower lighting systems to LED. So they have 4 of those in there at $16,000 each. The CAD program, I'll do my best to clarify on this. And this past year, we completed the migration of the CAD to the cloud. So that's really just hosting it yourself on a server to hosting it on the web through Tyler Technologies, which is the vendor. This is a migration to an updated version of CAD called Enterprise Records. They have police records or law enforcement records and some other modules that need to be updated. So they have requested for that to be changed. There is a slight increase in the annual cost that's included in operating, but under new capital request, I did include the one-time fees that would be associated with that migration. There's more detail about that in the dispatch memo. And if you need any additional information beyond that, you can let me know. And then the phone system refresh, that was budgeted this year, but due to the timing of finishing the CAD migration, and we tapped into that budget to do some other things, such as the prepared by Axon and some other things. So they've carried over or re-added the phone system refresh to the capital budget for next year. And the operating expense notes, the main increases there are prepared by Axon and the computer workstations and some other small increases. And the next slide, as a reminder, the city funds our half of the 911 dispatch center with a 911 service fee. We started at $6 per month, went to $7 the second year, and then the third year and every year since, it has been $8 per month per occupied residential unit. So it's only charged if the unit is occupied. And that is one of the fees that's on the water bill. So in the first couple of years of that fee, the tower system maintenance was still included for the first few years. We weren't paying an additional fee for that. So we built up a little bit of a fund balance in the 911 fund in the first few years. So we've been spending that down. We've not had to increase that service fee. So as you can see, our beginning fund balance for this fiscal year was around 1.9. The current budget anticipates using about 330,000. That may not come to fruition because they do have a lot of vacant positions still, so they have about 7 vacant positions. But as budgeted, we were going to use 330,000 in prior year reserves. So our anticipated beginning balance for next year is just under 1.6, and with all of their operating and capital requests, that would require use of 832,000, leaving a potential about $765,000 balance at the end of fiscal year 27. Again, we want to be good stewards of those fees and spend that money down before we consider anything a couple years down the road. Council may have to consider whether we supplement with general fund if we get to that point, or do anything else about that fee. So,
Stacy,
Yes.
what is, if I may have overlooked it, what's the income for this, expected for this year off of that $8 per month?
yes, I had the total revenue in there, but I didn't have it broken down in the line item report. Let me get that one moment. So this year, the last 2 years, we've collected just under and just above 1.6 million. We budgeted 1,608,000 for the current year, and for fiscal year 27, I projected 1,660,000 as a conservative estimate. So we are collecting over 1.6 million
Okay.
in that. And then we do receive about 440,000 from the state CMRS board. We do share half of that revenue with the county. And then just for a note, the total dispatch expense budget that the county contributes to is just under 5.4 million. So the county's contribution is just under 2.7. So the county's will be contributing, if everything's funded, approximately 2.7 million. We would be contributing the 1.6 million in fees plus spending down the balance of the reserves. So I just take the expenses.
We have.
I'm sorry.
I'm hearing what you say. We have plenty to cover 911 based on.
At least for this year and probably the next year, and then we may have to
Okay.
discuss whether, in the past, general fund covered these expenses before we implemented the fee. So that'll be a council and mayor policy decision when we get to that point.
But we also have a capital expense for the expansion of the 911 center.
Yes.
So,
And right now, the design fees that are in there would be covered by general fund as of right now.
Right.
We don't have that capital expenditure being covered by the fees. It would be covered by the general fund.
and
Okay. Our last department that we'll focus on will be cemetery. Not a lot to talk about here. There's no additional requests for staffing. Next slide. I will make a general comment. In general, our revenue from cemetery has been decreasing. We've talked about this at Finance Committee. An interment service, that's over $1,000 fee, but a lot of people are choosing to be cremated. So it has decreased our service revenue. We're also not selling quite as many lots right now because space is getting tight. So for a lot of the people that would typically come in and buy 8+ lots at once, we're not able to do that right now because Gene's trying to conserve until we're able to expand. We did carry over again the $200,000 for potential land purchase. The schematic design was to expand the cemetery where the old, I think, Cephalopol was. And so we have the schematic design, but that property has land and water conservation fund restrictions on it. So we have to find a equally valued property. It can't be property you already own. You have to buy new property. But I know Devin and the mayor have also been talking with the county about whether or not they'll be purchasing any parks property that we could transfer those to. So still looking at the best fit for that in the meantime. So, and as always, cemetery does not fund itself. So I believe the city and county each are contributing, found that number, about 293,000 of general fund dollars are used to supplement cemetery, and then the county supplements that equally. Last slide will be quick and easy. These are some of our other funds. Next slide, please. Yes. Have recurring revenue. The alcohol fund, I believe it's 13 or 14% of the police department salary, and about 25% of the city clerk's office salary and benefits are charged to the alcohol fund. This fund has been kind of stagnant with revenue. We seem to have kind of just hit a plateau, so it's not growing. But I know there's been some legislation proposed regarding alcohol fees, so we are keeping an eye on that and whether that would require us to reduce our percentages anytime in the near future. But I know Emily's been keeping a close eye on that, along with Devin and the mayor, and so we'll continue to keep an eye on that legislation and see if it affects this. We're hoping maybe it'll just be some additional reporting requirements, but if there's any questions, I'll defer to one of these ladies about that. Last, the MAP fund, the LGEA fund, these are estimates. I did contact the municipal road aid department, but they didn't have revenue numbers for next year yet. They said those would be coming out in a few weeks. Lastly, all of the project-specific funds, grants, business park, drug fund, et cetera, those will be part of the mayor's proposed budget presentation. They don't have recurring revenue. For federal and state grants, we'll just be carrying over anything that's been approved by council at this point. So that is all I have. And then, as mentioned, you've got a copy of the presentation was emailed, and you have a hard copy, the line item report that supports all of those numbers, and copies of departmental memos that were completed. So, as the mayor said, if you have any additional questions, please email he and I will work to compile those, and any responses to questions I'll send out to the full council so that everybody has any information that's requested.
All right. As always, Devin, Emily, and Stacy, thank you for your work on all this. I'll tell you what, it makes our job easy when you know that you got somebody there or a group of people there that are looking at things and working together to do what's best for our citizens in this community. Once again, this is just information to be shared with you. It's going to be a lot of sleepless nights going through all this, but that's okay. We'll take our time and look through it, and we'll be very proactive on things. It's also looking to be conservative and smart in what we do, and making sure that we provide the services that is needed by this city so we can continue to provide those services which is needed and that's what the public expects out of us. We are a service, and we want to continue to do that and hitting the much needed things that so people can come live, work, and play here. That being said, there is no other issue to be brought for this council. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.